developing countries are pushing people off their land and offering it to foreign governments and corporations for extremely cheap prices. They invest in offshore land to grow crops for food and fuel. Once it's grown and harvested, it's sent out of the country, leaving its people with uncertainty about where their land or food will come from. Currently, 1/3 of crops grown in America are used for biofuels. Now that the demand for biofuel has taken over available cropland, companies look elsewhere to grow their corn. But filling an average-sized car with biofuel amounts to as much maize as the average African person consumes in an entire year. And the less food there is for people, the more the food prices go up. Industrial farming to make biofuels also results in large amounts of CO2 being released into the atmosphere, accelerating climate change and reversing the positive effects that cleaner fuels have. Big investors are treating food as another traded commodity, and while it means big profits for agribusiness firms, most people are suffering because of it. The UN is calling for an investigation into the possibility that global food prices are being artificially pushed up by financial speculators. The prices of staple food could more than double in the next 20 years, and the demand for fuels used in industry and transport is adding to the increase. We have enough food on our planet to feed everyone, but hunger and obesity are indicators that our food system is not working. Around 1/3 of all food produced is not consumed but wasted. This amounts to nearly 1.3 billion tonnes. In wealthy countries, food is wasted when corporations, retailers and consumers toss perfectly edible portions into the bin. In underdeveloped nations, food goes to waste due to bad infrastructure and inefficient distribution. A few powerful governments and companies dominate the global food system. 3 agribusiness firms control nearly 90% of grain trading between them. They have utilised advances in science and technology to boost production, but they have failed to adopt sustainable practices to ensure the survival of our environmental systems. Food is responsible for up to 30% of global greenhouse gas emissions. Too many of the ways we grow food today are using up and destroying the natural resources we rely on. Arable land per person is decreasing, having almost halved since 1960, and water is even scarcer than land. Agriculture accounts for 70% of global freshwater use. The rising demand for oil to fuel our factories, power our cars, and meet our consumers' needs, as well as the increasing demand for meat and dairy products, is putting added pressure on the system. By 2050, there will be 9 billion people on the planet, and demand for food will have increased by 70%. As seasons and rainfall patterns become more erratic and unpredictable due to climate change, it will be even harder for farmers to know when to sow, cultivate, and harvest their crops. On top of this, extreme weather events can wipe out harvest in a single stroke. The global food system must be transformed. It's actually already started, and in most cases, governments aren't leading it. It's changing from the roots with individuals, organisations and movements connecting globally via vision for a healthy system that supports everyone. A growing desire for change has been gaining momentum, and its focus is a system with global solidarity, where we listen to the unheard voices and needs of all, and act out of cooperation, not competition, where we share resources fairly and value the environment, and where everyone has enough to eat, always. This shared vision that is growing from the roots is pressuring governments and corporations to change their old ways, giving way to innovation and increasing solidarity. Consumers are putting pressure on companies to shift to ethical and sustainable practices. Governments are now being forced to intervene on rising food prices, and steps are being taken toward better policies and trade agreements. Whether you work on a local, regional, national or global level, you can be a part of the movement to grow a better future. These are what some of the possibilities look like, but they are just the beginning. New ways of thinking, producing and consuming, a paradigm shift in agriculture towards more sustainable and ecologically friendly practices that benefit the world's 900 million small farmers, not just agribusiness. We don't just focus on crop yields, we focus on quality and distribution, better waste management, sustainable consumption and green consumerism. Adaptation to climate change and a reduced vulnerability to impacts, as well as a global deal on climate change to ensure countries are working together towards more sustainable practices. We preserve our resources and share them fairly. We take action on trade agreements. We regulate banks and reform bad policies. We support small-scale, environmentally friendly and organic production methods based on local knowledge. Women are empowered and the door is open for them to join the conversation on land use. We support communities to fight against corporations that are trying to push them off their land. We invest in smallholder agriculture so that communities can support themselves and don't go to bed hungry. How are you and your community impacted by the global food crisis? What are people doing to address these issues in your community? How can you help grow the movement?
You can see why we had to create a whole campaign around it. There's so many issues that are involved, and that video only touched on them so briefly, and a lot of the issues are really complex. But I created it in order to just sort of open them up for people, for them to then look further into the issues. And now, you're going to help us by thinking about how can the issues you just saw be relevant to an audience of young people. So, alright, so 3 things, as you know, is Oxfam's Youth Initiative. So our target audience is 16 to 26-year-olds. So you need to be considering this target market in your head when you're developing these ideas. Now, how do we get young people fired up about the issues that you just saw in the video? How do you communicate them? How do you market them in order for them to take action? So you were just sort of, in a way, educated, informed about some of these issues. Now what? What's the next step? How could we make that somehow go beyond just the passive interaction, the passive engagement to an interaction? And the issues that you're going to break up into groups, and the issues which you're going to look at, each group is going to look at a different one, is hunger. So this particular area of the global food system, so the fact that 1 in 7 people go hungry, how to communicate world hunger to a youth audience and inspire them to take action. And again, it's fun, empowering, it's not pictures of starving people and making people feel guilty. So it's that empowering sense that we always want to get across, which you need to think about. The other one is food wastage. Did you all know how much food was wasted? 1/3 of all food produced. I was so shocked when I figured that out, but it makes sense at a consumer level. You count up all the little things that we throw out every day, and on a restaurant level as well. There's so much food wastage that's going on that can be reduced. So that's another issue which you're looking at, how to communicate food wastage to young people to inspire them to take action on that issue. And the next one is supporting local farmers. So currently a lot of big businesses dominate the market. How do you get people back to that grassroots, local community movement level where we're supporting local farmers and not just going to the big business approach because it's cheaper and easier and just because we're always bombarded with their messages. So you can apply your marketing skills to this challenge, and as I said, this is a live brief, so the ideas that you come up with are going to be taken back and have the possibility to be implemented, and you can be part of that as well. Because at the moment, Oxfam has a grow campaign, but Oxfam's Youth Initiative 3 things, we haven't really developed a strategy yet to communicate that campaign to our target market. So this is a live problem. Now Jan is going to break it up into groups, I think, based on your tutorial
I was
group.
just thinking, what's the best way to do it? Going first by the tutorials, because you have 3 questions. Like the first set of tutorials, like question of tutorial directly after the session. Hands up. How many people? Really hands up. Oh, they worked out perfectly. So you cover the first question, which is this one here. Okay. You all from this side will be one group, and you all will be one group. So put your hands up together. The people who have the first 2 tutorials now, whether it's with Tessa or Supriya, like from 12 to 1 o'clock, hands up. Okay. Then, who has the tutorial afterwards, whether with Tessa or with Supriya, hands up. And then we have a third group of tutorials now, hands up. The One person? Who has the third set of tutorials?